Hey guys, live on RickLindar.com, and of course the house of biceps. All right, this is part 2 of the Q&A. You guys asked me some Q's on the YouTubes. I'm gonna give you some A. I don't know if that came out right or not. All right, rolling down the line, Red October Eyes says, hey Clint, how often do you work on your mobility? I've been having some issues with my hips, glutes, lower back for a while now. So I was curious how often you work on your mobility in general. Mobility, man, I'm not for sure if I enjoy the term mobility. I think it's just movement. I go through a checklist of all the things the motions that I need to be able to do on a regular basis. And as a father, most of those motions involve me picking something up off the ground, twisting, turning, chasing, yelling, stop, don't do that, don't touch that. Again, I mean it, this time. As a power lifter, your mobility it doesn't have to be that great. Your ability to move doesn't have to be that great. You've got to get down to parallel in a squat. You've got to get down to where the bar will touch your chest, and you can manipulate that with, your arch, flaring of your elbows, grip width, things of that nature. And sometimes a lack of mobility can definitely help you to move extra weight. The deadlift, I know more than one podium finisher at World's Strongest Man who could not put his own shoes on. I know several that could not put his own shoes on. Wife had to put his shoes on and tie them so he could go out and compete. So the mobility, people say strongmen have to have amazing mobility. Well, strongmen have to be able to move amazingly. They don't have to have amazing mobility. So the two things are definitely different. For me, I'll be 40 in a few days. I do like to be able to put my hand behind my head. I couldn't do that. Well, I couldn't do that earlier today, to be honest, before I trained. But when I wake up in the morning, the light switch for my bedroom is back behind my head on the wall. And years ago, man, it would take an act of all gods known to man for me to be able to, grab something to be able to push the light switch on the wall, or to grab my phone off the table next to me, or to grab my son out of his crib and pull him into the bed with me. So, I want to be able to move. I want to be able to get in the floor. So honestly, so many people when I began weightlifting kept giving me the advice, you gotta stretch. You have to force stretch. It hurts, I know it hurts. Let's push it some more. And you know what, the more that I stretched, the more that I did mobility, foam rolling, smashing, twisting, turning, that sort of thing. The more that I did that, the worse my flexibility and mobility got. I was more sore from doing mobility and flexibility work than I was from training. And that's a bad thing, and that's a great way to increase your rate of injury. So I trained with all of these amateurs that kept telling me this, and then I trained with 2 Olympians right here in my gym, and both of them told me the same thing. If you're not gonna be in that position naturally, and for a weightlifter it means with a barbell in your hand, don't force it. Don't do any stretching. It's movement. So move with a barbell. If you need to snatch, work in that snatch range of motion. If you've got to be able to get a bar behind your head, get the bar behind your head. If you need to be able to press it over, then just press the barbell over your head. Do the best you can. Never force a stretch. Work on movement. I think it needs to be emphasized that the word should be movement. People ask me a lot how I increased my mobility, my flexibility in my shoulders. I took a barbell, one of these axles that's behind me. I'm hoping you can see one of them. I took one of those, I've got a bunch of them. So I took one home and I had one at the gym, and I was training almost every day, sometimes twice a day at the time. So at least twice a day, I did 4 sets of 10 of an empty barbell. It went over my head, and about half of them went behind my head. Lots of Bradford presses, movements, twists, turns like that. But I was constantly pressing, constantly moving the shoulder. If you need to work on your flexibility getting down in the hole, if your back is tight, if your hips are tight, if your glutes are tight, get into a squat. Walk across the kitchen floor 5-6 times a day. Play with your kids in the floor. Don't forget, it is movement. It's not stretching. It is not stretching. Don't forget that. It's just movement. And you will become a product of what you do. So if you are someone who is constantly moving, constantly pushing their hand above their head, not forcing, but pushing their hand above the head, constantly getting down on one knee, constantly moving on the floor with your children, you're going to become a product of that. And over time, safely, you're going to become a more mobile individual. All right, Robbie BT asked a series of questions. I'll try to cover them one at a time. Any tips on longevity and strength sports? I covered this in a speech I gave a couple years ago about being the tortoise and not the hare. It's very important to make small jumps in everything you do. It is very important to understand why you made progress. When I was younger, I really had the thought process of, I'm stronger this week, so I'm going to add weight to the bar. And I coach a lot of athletes that go through a training rotation, and we'll say, this month we're going to base your training on 200 pounds. We're going to say you can bench press 200 pounds. Your best ever is like 220, but we're going to base it on 200. And your last set of the day, I let you do as many reps as possible. So let's say where I'm calling for 3 reps, you're getting like 5 to 6. We get to the next month, and I say, nope, we're going to stay at 200 pounds. I want you to repeat it. I want you to rep PR this month. If we're doing 5s, 3s, 2s, things like that, and you were getting extra reps, I want you to get one more rep this month than you did last month. Plus, we're going to push your accessories a little harder as well. We're looking for PRs and all the accessories. And then my clients will start asking, hey, I think I'm ready to move up my training max. Can I move it up this month? Why? Why would you want to do that? If using less weight, if using a lower training max is getting you better results than you've had in the last 2 years of training on your own, why would you want to increase the weight? You're making progress using less weight. Why would you want to increase it? Why would you want to go for it other than just being the selfish athlete and go for it? So I think you have to be able to look from what I call the coach's point of view, and you have to be the tortoise and not the hare. You have to be the smart person that thinks long-term progressive. You have to do a lot more training and building than you do testing. Save those tests for, once a semester, twice a year. Really test it. Spend the rest of the time getting smarter, getting better. How to deal with joint aches and pains from training. I'm not a big fan of anti-inflammatories. I think if you absolutely have to have one, I get a bad headache, and I have to be a dad, then I'm going to go take ibuprofen or Tylenol or Excedrin or Voltaren or whatever it takes to get help get rid of my headache. Plus ice and heat and massage and movement, take a nap, extra hydration, everything else. But if you're dealing with something like an elbow pain, then I think you obviously have to address why you're getting the pain. Are you running that elbow through the exact same movement every single week? If that's causing that grinding pain. Are you doing an exercise that flares it up? Are you sleeping funny? Are you playing video games? Are you holding the mouse on your computer with that hand? I think you have to address why you are getting that pain, and you have to look at removing that before you look at doing anything else. Ice is great. I love heat. I think heat is absolutely wonderful. I want the heat in the joint. I want the heat in the area. I want the extra blood and nutrients to everything to go in that area, and then I want to flush it out, a lot of times through smashing and compression, and then I want that heat back in, then I want to repeat it as much as possible. But I think everyone is different, and I use everything from ice, heat, hot creams, compression, sleeves, acupuncture, e-stim. If I had a voodoo doll, I would use a voodoo doll, but I think you have to take the time to figure out what exactly works for you and do a little bit of everything. But I caution you, on being the person that has the slightest pain, and the first answer is always anti-inflammatories, because that's not the first answer. Biggest mistakes I've seen in beginners, intermediates, and advanced athletes. Biggest mistakes. Not having a plan for the future. I remember a former World's Strongest Man athlete sitting on my couch 10 years ago, and my wife asking him, what is your plans for the future? And he said, this is my plan. I'm a professional strongman. I compete in strongman. This is my plan. This is how I'm going to make my money for the rest of my life. And my wife, who is a perpetual student and worker, laughed. And lo and behold, 3 years later, he was gone. Absolutely gone from the scene completely. Had no plan. So I think the beginner doesn't know how to set up a plan. And I think that's where having a coach really comes into play, to have someone help you set up a plan, to have someone that can help you lay down the foundation of your training, to get rid of the big crap that you don't need, push it aside, so you can focus on the stuff that will make you better. I think the same thing with the intermediate. The intermediate always wants to look, they're so close to being elite. They're so close to being a pro. They're so close to making it to Worlds, or to the big show, or to getting their pro card, to be a bodybuilder, whatever it might be. They're really, really close, and they start taking a lot of chances, and they don't have a set out plan. And I think most of the time the reason they do that, they have a goal, but they don't have a plan to get there. And I think the plan, if they have one, is always just, I'm going to try harder. But they have to develop a plan. Once someone is already advanced, I think that's when that plan has to be absolutely precise, because they've pushed themselves to the absolute limit. Whether it's a pro bodybuilder who's looking at, hey, I want to make the top 10. I want to make the final call out. I want to win the Olympia. I want to go to the finals at Worlds. Whatever it might be, I think they have to have an exact plan on how to do that. And I think if you look at the guys who have made, the elite level of advanced, whatever that might be, the stage at the Olympia, the finals at the World's Strongest Man, or just making World's Strongest Man for the last 10 years or so, you're talking about people who have made very, very smart choices. And they've always had a plan to get them to exactly where they want to be each and every year. The people that are come and go, well, maybe they had a plan. Their plan wasn't very good. Thoughts on the International Olympic Committee's weightlifting ultimatum in regards of performance-enhancing drugs? This needs to be an absolute full video of itself. The IOC has my full support when it comes to it. It's their sport. It's their sport. It's their competition. They invite weightlifting to be a part of their competition. If the weightlifting committees, if the IWF is not going to follow their rules, if the athletes are not going to follow their rules, they have no business being there. That's my opinion. But I'm working on a full video for this because this deserves some serious attention. How to train and add in strongman lifts for the casual lifter, someone who's not going to compete. I think the big thing here is just do something. If there's something that looks fun, do it. I think the core events, tire flip, farmer's walk, Atlas stones, sandbags, all of them they're pretty doggone cheap. Pretty much everyone, if you set out, a year or two, and you had to buy, a full set of 10 sandbags and sand and everything else to go in it. If you had to buy 5 Atlas stones and everything that came with it, if you wanted to get, a pair of farmer's walk implements, and I'm going to put up a photo of some implements right here I made out of oxygen cylinders that were my favorite implements I've ever used. Weighed 220 pounds, empty. They're absolutely perfect. Walk out, pick them up, go. Don't have to carry any plates. They're absolutely fantabulous, wonderful. You pick up, 3 or 4 tires, things like that. I think over a year's time, 2 years time, whatever it takes, you could set up, something good quality. There are a lot of things that you can do. The big thing, you just find something that's interesting. And then after your training sessions, if you're doing a squat day, go out and what sounds good and just go play and take the time to think about how your body's recovering from all of this. If you're developing some bicep tendonitis from all the work that you're doing, then maybe you need to back off a little bit on your squats or your bench press or your overhead press, or maybe you need to back off on the event training itself. Maybe you decide, hey, I'm gonna have a full day of nothing but just tearing up stuff outside in the yard, in the strongman yard. So you do some light stuff throughout the week, and then you've got one day where you've got some goals and you just go out and you attack it like crazy and have a whole lot of fun. But if you don't plan on competing, do the events, do them for reps, do them from sets, set some goals. I want to carry this 100 feet, followed by 105 feet, followed by 110 feet one day. And just look at having fun more than anything else. Jalalundi 1000, how to deadlift in weightlifting shoes. Take them off. Take them off. That's it. It's my advice. I know one person that deadlifts in weightlifting shoes. Even Raymonsburg Manis, pro strongman, a podium finisher at World's Strongest Man. At one time, he was the world record holder on the log clean and press. He was an Olympian in Sydney, I do believe, for weightlifting in the super heavyweight category, I think. I competed against him in a deadlift, took his weightlifting shoes off and went up there in his socks. That's my advice. If you got weightlifting shoes on, you got a deadlift, take them off, leave them in your gym bag, go deadlift, put some chucks on. Challenging Gravity asked how to train like a strongman in a commercial gym without strongman equipment. I think I've covered this in another video. You've got to go find somebody to train with. Other than that, you need to work on your explosive speed, dynamic effort box squats, dynamic effort speed bench, work on your overhead press, strict press, push press, dynamic effort overhead press, dumbbells. A strongman is a mix between an athletic power lifter and a bodybuilder. They have the ability to use large amounts of weight to move it very explosively and from all angles. That's the best way I can describe it. You need to go find a crew to train with, and I would set up a series of dynamic effort training days in the gym. And I would kind of mix and match that a little bit with a little bit of bodybuilding stuff. Don't be afraid to throw some inclines in there, some dumbbells, maybe even a machine every once in a while. Get outside and push your car, pull your car, drag a sled. Have some fun. Flynn O'Brien says, what are the best deadlift suits? What are my preferences on brands of gear and why? All right, the best deadlift suits are gonna have Velcro straps. I don't care what anybody says. The Velcro straps are very important when it comes to a deadlift suit. If you're having issues getting to the bar, you can loosen that strap by 1/4 of an inch, and it makes a big difference getting down to the bar. If you're pulling from 12 inches, 14 inches, you can tighten that sucker down and be able to deadlift with that. If you gain and lose weight, you can adjust the straps. If you're taking an opener, first attempt, second attempt, third attempt, it's like having an adjustable bench press shirt. You just tighten it up a little bit, get more out of it. Now, I have always used the metal deadlift suits. I began buying from metal, honestly, primarily because the customer service at Elite FTS is second to none. At the time, I was looking at the Inzer Fusion deadlift suit. That was just coming out, and a couple of people had told me that it was really nice. Inzer has a reputation of taking forever to get you your products. I guess you have to be a sponsored athlete by Inzer, or you have to know somebody to really get them to rush things along. But I'm the kind of person that when I get the thought in my mind that I want something, I want it now. And the people at Elite FTS, they really understand that. I don't know. But I placed my order. I got exactly what I wanted. It's an absolute amazing suit. I have the Metal King Pro Deadlifter. The one I have now is orange. It was kind of an off run. It's supposed to be black. I'm not a big fan of orange because my gym is kind of a really dirty place. So I am going to get it dirty. My suit is always the dirty suit. Every time I get together with a group of friends that have similar gear, I'm always the guy with the sweat stain covered suit. So I prefer to have black, so it kind of covers that up, but it works absolutely fantastic. I have seen the metal jacked deadlift suit. It's absolutely amazing. It's out of this world, but I know how to use that one. I know how to use my Metal King Pro Deadlifter, and it's more important to know how to use the gear that you have than it is to have even better gear. So I'm going to continue to stick with the suit that I have. I could go get a brand new suit off the shelf, put it on, and I know exactly how to use it. To me, that's a lot more important than getting that new metal jacked deadlift suit. Hint, hint, Dave Tate, if you're listening. So I'm going to stick with my old one, and I'm going to make the absolute best of it. So that's what I think. I've never had any bad comments out of the Metal King Pro Deadlifter. I absolutely love that suit. Velcro straps, highly adjustable, highly versatile. It's most important to get it to fit tight on the thighs and the butt rather than through the chest and shoulders. You want as much pop through the thighs and butt as humanly possible. All right, Pike asks, how should I go about my squat training if my main goal is a big deadlift? I don't have plans to compete, and the deadlift is my favorite and strongest movement of the power lifts. But I also don't want to throw out the squat training because I think it helps with health and simply trains the deadlifting muscles very well. He does powerlifting once a week, and he has a bodybuilding day, I guess, as a separate day. Should he train it as heavy as he can or cut back a little bit and do more reps? You know, I think this is very similar to the way I train. What I would do is I would look to get an SS yoke bar and I would do box squats with bands, train it with a very dynamic effort. The SS yoke bar forces a lot of stress on that upper back. You have to force an arch just like you would have to with a deadlift. It takes a lot of pressure off the shoulders, the biceps, the triceps, the elbows. Saves you for bench pressing and other strongman events and doing a lot of other things in your training. I think you can do a lot of things with bands off a box, off a high box, mid box, low box. The box squat with a wide stance, as you see me doing in my videos, builds the deadlift like no other lift that there is. You can combine the dynamic effort box squat with bands and chains, with speed deadlifts, isometric deadlifts, and if you're a conventional deadlifter, throw in some sumo deadlifts occasionally. If you're a sumo deadlifter, throw in some conventional deadlifts occasionally, work on your weak stance, and I think that is the absolute great recipe for building a deadlift, even while squatting. Now, if you still want to work on your squat after you finish your dynamic effort box squats, just remove the box. Hit a couple more sets of 1 to 3, whatever you feel like, at the end of every dynamic effort box squat training session. You're not going to forget how to squat. Squatting is an amazing exercise. You're absolutely right. All right, guys, that wraps up segment 2 of July's question and answer. Give me a couple more days, and I'll be back with section 3. See you next time, guys.